Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast. It's Thursday, March 31st, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We're talking Royals today, specifically how the starting rotation might line up behind opening day starter Zack Greinke. There are no shortage of candidates, but who will get the call? Beat writer Lynn Worthy, along with columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam McDowell are here to break it down. We also look at how the bullpen might shake out and the top of the lineup, the batting order, how that's going to go on opening day just a week away. So let's begin with the show that started as a SportsBeat Live. Hey, good morning from Kansas City and welcome to SportsBeat Live, the show where we talk about the Royals with the writers and columnists at the Kansas City Star and with you. Please join us in the discussion with your questions and comments. Columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam McDowell are here. Beat writer Lynn Worthy, who is in surprise, will be along shortly. So, guys, I wanted to talk about pitching today and the lineup now that we're a week away from opening day. But there was a little news this morning, just in the last half hour or so, that the Royals have basically announced that Mike Matheny was going to be their manager in 2023, exercised the option on Mike Matheny. So this happened just in the last 20 minutes or so. The release came out, and I was reading the release, and I guess I had forgotten. I knew the Royals had picked up the pace in the second half of last year, but I didn't realize they had baseball's best record of improvement, the best improvement from the first half of the season to the second half. And we're over 500 in the second half of the season. They still finished well out of the playoff chase, and I think 74 and 88 was the final record. But I don't think anybody was thinking that Mike Matheny wouldn't be the manager for the Royals anytime in the near future. Vahe, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's right, Blair. Look, I've been really impressed with him. I know it's been a really funky kind of couple years because of COVID and shortened seasons and all kinds of stuff that scrambles everybody up. On the other hand, I think literally from day one, you could see the impact he made in there. I remember Whit Merrifield sort of mincing no words about that a change was needed, and that Mike's energy, Mike's approach really was reaching them. And, we can go on about this in a minute, but the other thing I wanted to point out is that, some of the hesitation about him coming over from St. Louis was there had been criticism, and I think fair criticism, about his ability to and willingness to relate to younger players. And I think that Mike Matheny, for a good long year in between those jobs, year and a half, 2 years before he actually took the new job, really did sort of a self-audit. And I think a lot of people talk about this and don't do it, but I think he really grew through that. And I think he obviously had a lot of great instincts to begin with, but I think he's a pretty nurturing presence, demanding but nurturing. And I think you can see the charisma, all of which maybe doesn't add up to one decision that works or doesn't work, but I think that he's done a really good job helping revive the confidence of a team that needs that, among a lot of other things, to get back to where we can watch them enjoyably.
There are obviously holdovers from the glory days of the Royals, the recent glory days. Salvador Perez, chief among them. But Mike Matheny really is. It was the Ned Yost era was over. Mike Matheny is now in his beginning his third year, and it's basically a new generation of Royals. And Mike Matheny didn't come in the best of circumstances. His first year was the baseball COVID year, and then he gets a full season in 2021 and shows improvement over the second half. And I think there's more optimism for this team in this season than there has been in the last, 2 or 3 years. Sam, what this makes sense, doesn't it? The Matheny essentially an extension.
Yeah, I mean, there's the contract year for players and there's the contract year for a manager, and one makes a lot more sense than the other. I mean, you want your manager, especially with a young group of talent, focusing on the future. Obviously there's emphasis on the present as well, and I think the Royals believe that they're equipped to win this year, or at least equipped to compete. And so obviously that takes priority, but you also want, especially in baseball, when you're required to develop your own talent, to have a manager that's focused on that aspect as well, which is why it makes sense to have an investment, beyond just the season that's upcoming.
Extra playoff team in each league this year, right? Isn't it? Don't we go to the expanded playoffs this year? 12 total for baseball.
Yeah, 6 each.
Okay, so that plays in everybody's favor, right, from a percentage chance, but it really helps, I think, a team like the Royals that is trending. I think we can all agree it's trending up, but but trending up for the Royals may mean let's get to 500, and if you're around 500, you're probably in the playoff chase toward the end of the season. Okay, so we're going to hear from Mike Matheny now, not on the option for 2023. But he announced his opening day starter earlier this week. We had a feeling, and we discussed it on a previous show, that it would be Zack Greinke. It is indeed Zack Greinke. So let's hear what Mike Matheny had to say about selecting his opening day starter.
Sure, Zack Greinke will start opening day for us. This decision was made the day we met before he even signed here, and it was very clear to him the expectations of what he was going to do for this club. And I told him, as soon as we give him the green light, we'll rewrite what it looks like for opening day, because we're the guy that we want out there. And it's the right guy. And I know our fans are going to be excited about it. He kind of asked when we were meeting that first time, what do you see as my role here? And I told him, you told him the first day, is that you need to hear anything else? I mean, let's just say it all. I expect you to be the guy we throw out there every fifth day or so. And show these guys by how you go about your business. And at that point, you could see that registered. And so for me, telling him later was just validating what I'd already told him. And I know he's excited to be out there. I know it's something he'll be excited about too, in his reunion back in Kauffman Stadium and with the fan base in KC. Loyal fan base to its own, and he's what I've heard it said before. He's one of ours, and so it's good to see him back in these colors, and how excited he is to be here, I think, plays into that too. I mean, how many times do you get a guy who just all through the off season, when he was allowed to say anything, it was very clear this is where he wanted to be. What a great compliment to the organization. What a great compliment to the community and the fan base.
So not a big surprise that Zack Greinke is the opening day starter, even though Keller in the rotation has been the opening day starter for 2 of the last 3 seasons for the Royals. I think the big surprise for me was reading Lynn Worthy's story and then going through some records myself, that Greinke, this is his second opening day start for the Royals, which means he only had one in his first go around in however many years he was with, 7-8 seasons with Kansas City, Cy Young Award winner, and he only got one opening day start for the Royals in that tenure. The guy's on the top 10 lists of strikeouts and I think starts and several other career categories, but couldn't unseat Gil Mesh for several years as the opening day guy. So this not unexpected, Sam, was it, to have Greinke take the ball on the first game?
No, and Greinke, the Royals have so much young talent that I think we're wondering what they're going to get out of specific players. But as far as their veteran crop goes, I think Greinke's a really interesting case, with his age and what he's done the past couple of seasons. I still think Greinke's got a lot left because of the way he approaches pitching. He's more of the Greg Maddux type than he is the guy that relies on a fastball. You talked about his first stint with the Royals. He's a guy that threw 100 miles an hour when they put him in that bullpen role. Like, he could do that. He doesn't have that in his arsenal anymore, but he picks up little tidbits from pitching along the way for the past decade plus. But yeah, I mean, obviously no surprise. I mean, that's the reason they brought him here. as much as he'll have an influence on the younger guys on the staff, and I truly believe he does, the purpose is for him to be a quality pitcher, and that belongs at the top of the rotation here.
And you guys saw his influence in when you were out in Arizona, the way he was associating himself with the younger pitchers he doesn't know, but got to know at spring training. I was pretty impressed with that. Basically him observing and seeing what a Daniel Lynch, Carlos Hernandez, what those guys were about, and that's really a tribute to Zack Greinke. And I hope he can bring not just the leadership, but some mound success. The Royals need that. This is still a young pitching staff with among the starters here, and it's still, you can still make a case it's a developing pitching staff. A lot of unproven, performances by these guys. Greinke is the proven commodity here, so no surprise on Zack, is it, Vahe?
No, not really, but just to underscore a lot of the things you guys are saying, I'd urge any of our audience to make sure they saw Sam McDowell's piece on Greinke and the way he's already paying attention, spending time with the other pitchers. Sam, one of the things that stood out about your piece to me was the reverence in which or with which this young staff holds Greinke. It was almost like, a rock star descending among them, and turns out to be relatable. And that was really cool to see you expand on. And I think that, this is obvious, but I think it's a worthwhile point to restate, is just Zack Greinke being in that role kind of resets, I think, the rest of whatever the rotation is going to be into maybe its more rightful place. I think for whatever reason, I don't think Brad Keller has really assumed the role of the number one starter in these opportunities. I mean, he's got the stuff. He's had some big moments, but he's also he also really struggled the first part of last season in particular. So I think maybe it just psychologically actually is a boost that way. Of course, we've still got some things to figure out, and I know we're going to discuss this about what the rest of the order is.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. How does the rotation fall in behind Zack Greinke? A couple things to keep in mind. The roster is at 28 for the first month of the season. So in April, major league teams can carry 28 players. That's basically 2 additional players for the team in the first month. So and as we saw last year, I believe we saw this last year, that the Royals had basically a 6-man starting rotation early on, and then got it down to 5 with all the there's open dates, and so all that plays into the rotation. But having said that, let's take a stab at this. I hope Lynn Worthy gets to join us here soon. He's working on a news story, but there are some questions about how this who the starters are going to be and who the swing men are going to be. And if we're looking at swing starters, bullpen / rotation guys. So I guess I'll get it started. And then I'll have you guys correct me. But I think Brad Keller will be in the rotation, and Brady Singer. I got it written down here. I had to make sure Carlos Hernandez, How about Bubic in the rotation as well? And of course, there's Jackson Coar. So I just listed 6 or 7 instead of 5. What can we get a consensus of opinion on who the 5 are going to be, or maybe the 4 after Greinke? Sam, we'll go with you.
Yeah, I think Keller is a lock. Carlos Hernandez is a lock. I think Bubic probably would be my 4th guess. I don't think Brady Singer is a lock. I think he's more likely than not to be part of the rotation, but I would hesitate to say he's certain to be part of it. You mentioned the fact that they've got 28 guys. I do think the Royals' extra players will be starting pitchers, and therefore we will see more than 5 guys start a game in April. As how they mix that in, I don't think it'll be just a straight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because they do have some off days in there. So you still want Greinke throwing every 5 games. You still want Brad Keller throwing every 5 games, and Carlos Hernandez throwing every 5 games. But after that, I think I would say Bubic and, probably Brady Singer. But again, I don't think that's a lock. I think Daniel Lynch could factor in there. And you mentioned Jackson Coar, and they've got a couple other guys. I think when we were out at spring training, I thought 9 guys at least were competing for those 5 spots. And now that Lynn's here, I'd be interested to know how he's got it shaken out.
All right, Lynn, that's as good an introduction as there can be. Sam McDowell is putting you on the spot on filling in the rotation after Zack Greinke. What's your best guess?
I've gone back and forth, but I still wouldn't be surprised if at some point we see 6 as opposed to 5. Only thing is with the schedule spread out at times, I don't know. I mean, I think you see Greinke. I think you see Keller. I think Singer and Bubic are there to start off. I also think Lynch is there, but Hernandez, I think, should be right there too. He just doesn't have as many innings. He really hasn't pitched as much, and he would definitely be a guy I could see fitting out of the bullpen. And so, depending on how stretched out guys are, and depending on what they need as far as innings, I could see them going with 6 guys, and I think I named 6 there. Or I could see them maybe, doing some sort of combination where, maybe Greinke stays on a 5-day schedule. And I don't know if it seems like it would be a sort of a wonky way to do it where other guys are on a different schedule than what he's on. But I think there are 6 guys that I could definitely see in there. I'm just not sure how they want to do that. I'm not sure if Hernandez becomes a guy that maybe is a bullpen guy that they use in different spots. Because, I mean, as a starter, we've seen his stuff be at 98 to 100. If he's just going in small bursts, I mean, maybe that plays up even more. And if not, I mean, it really doesn't need to play up more. So it'd be interesting. I think, that Matheny has hinted enough at the idea of, well, that's how we used to do. Like, obviously, we know that's what a lot of the way the guys used to come up is bullpen and then move into the rotation. But I think the fact that it gets mentioned as much as it has makes me think that maybe that's sort of greasing the wheels for, we might move this guy into the bullpen who's been a starter, but that's the way that we've sort of conditioned the start in the past.
He would do that in St. Louis, wouldn't he? That was the path, and I know Sam McDowell, you've followed the Cardinals over the years, but that seems to be how it happened in St. Louis with starters coming through the bullpen first, at least some of them anyway. Yeah,
I mean, and I think especially when you've got a young staff. Heck, we just talked about Zack Greinke, the guy who's at the top of this rotation. He took a turn in the bullpen at one point when he came back to baseball. That was it's sort of the get comfortable path, I think, to Major League Baseball if you have not thrown a lot of innings in this league.
Okay, Lynn, we also discussed how the Royals would use the 2 extra spots on the roster through April. Every teams get they get 28, and are we looking at 2 extra arms, or how do you think they break it up?
I'd say 2 extra arms. I mean, I doubt that it's that it makes a whole lot of sense to carry an extra catcher or something like that, and then if you're just adding the bench guy that. I don't know how much they're going to be using the bench on a regular basis. I think the arm, especially this time of year, especially coming off of a truncated spring training, And you still have a lot of young pitchers who haven't logged a lot of innings. I think it's got to be an arm, at least in my mind.
Okay. All right. So still to be determined how it shakes out after Greinke. What about the way the bullpen sets up? The first, after Barlow, is there an eighth inning guy, a seventh inning guy, sixth inning guy? How is that looking right now, Lynn?
Well, I don't think it's going to be by innings. Matheny's sort of shunned that since he got here. It's going to be more of, a group of guys that they'll use in the quote unquote high leverage situations. And so I think for the bullpen, you'll have Barlow, you'll have Stallmont, you'll have Brents. Those guys I think are automatics coming from last year. And yesterday talking with Matheny, because Stallmont's had a couple outings that have been a little bumpy with some walks. And I asked about just sort of like how much they're, putting into the results you've seen in spring training with some of these guys. And he basically said, well, with those guys, they've had enough track record that we're not worried about them. They're going to be fine. Just get your work in. But the guys that they don't have as much familiarity with, they need to see something from those guys. Now, I also would put Amir Garrett in that group of those four guys are pretty much locked in. And then after that, you've got a bunch of guys who have shown you flashes. I mean, like Dylan Coleman looked real good yesterday. That was the first time we saw him in the spring training game. Now, guys like Tapia and Payams, who we saw do pretty well last year out of the bullpen, have been bumpier, and they don't have as long a track record with this organization. And if you look at their track records overall, they've had a lot more up and down. So those guys, I think, might be fighting for spots. And then you also throw in guys like if there's starters who, they want to keep those arms in the big leagues, or if they feel like they could help them and maybe give multiple innings. So if that's a Hernandez, or if that's a Heasley, or if that's a Zerpa, then those arms could be coming, in bullpen type roles, or at least early in the season. I'm trying to think. There was somebody else that I was thinking about. I'm blanking at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I think the bullpen is where you have a lot of different options, and then once you throw starters in there potentially, I mean, they could go a lot of different ways. And bullpens again are sort of a year-to-year proposition. So those guys that looked well last year, like I said, like Payams, Tapia, guys that they picked up, have been, a little shaky this year. They may not be guaranteed to come in. And then Quas is another guy who I was thinking of, comes from that weird angle, has looked really good this spring training. So I think he gives them a different look, and he's a guy who's pitched well this spring training. So I think that's a guy who I wouldn't be surprised at all if he makes the opening day roster.
Lynn, I read your game story after the Royals, I think it was against the Mariners earlier this week, where Daniel Lynch threw 5 really strong innings, right, and didn't walk anyone. And so he was asked about what he thinks his role is going to be, and we still don't know that, do we, at this point? I mean, he absolutely could be a swing guy for the Royals.
He could be, but I think just the way they've handled him so far, I mean, the fact that last year, when he came up, I mean, it really they forced the issue to put him in the bullpen, because at the time you had Junis, who was pitching well, and at the time they decided, well, we're going to move Junis back to the bullpen, even though he'd been pitching well as a starter, and created that spot to plug Lynch in. And I think he's been one of the guys that they've always sort of earmarked as potentially had even more upside than what you saw with Singer and Bubic, who obviously broke in earlier. So I think that they have him as a guy that they really want to see in that rotation. But, I mean, nothing's been set in stone right now.
Very good. All right, Vahe, do we want to go Whit at the top of the order? Or let's just go – I think we need a new name for one of them anyway. Merrifield, no. But how about –
somebody
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say somebody wittier than I am needs to come up with that. But
Whittier, I like that.
What?
Very good.
I look, I like it. I think you can see why you'd make the case that you don't want to have to throw him fully in water to that degree, right? He's just breaking in. On the other hand, Lynn can disabuse us of this because he's seen it all, but it seems he's handling things pretty well right now. And I think we understand his makeup is of the nature that if he's in the big leagues, just go ahead and go for it. I mean, you don't need to baby him and put him eighth or whatever the other scenarios would be. But I could see that case, but I think it's kind of an exciting proposition, right? Right out of the gate to have that kind of exposure for him. I don't think we think there's any doubt this is going to happen at this point. I guess that's the first question. Is he going to make the team? I think, Lynn, you've got a handle on that.
Yes. Period. So, yeah, as far as where in the order, I don't know. I mean, people could make their cases, and Mike Matheny won't really talk about it specifically because I wrote something the other day, and I asked about placement of young players breaking into the lineup. And he said, "Are we talking philosophically?" I said, "Well, I would talk specifically. I just don't think you'll answer." And he said, "I won't." So we stayed philosophical. But I think the fact that we've seen him in that 2 spot so much this spring training, I think, is telling.
Sure. Yes. And he looks like he belongs. I thought he looked like he belonged last year at this time, but now for the second time, he looks like he belongs, and now we're all pretty sure he will belong. How about, are we far enough removed from the Ken Griffey era to call Bobby Witt just Junior? Do you think there'll be any confusion, or if it was just Junior?
Well, I know there's folks in the organization that is the nickname that they've got for him, like the Junior is what a lot of the scouting people and things have called him for a while now. But just for me, growing up the time that I did, there's one Junior, and that doesn't fly. So I've just been going with keeping it simple, going with Bobby, and then Witt's still Witt. So that's just me.
You're making me think of this for some reason that Sam Mellinger really wanted Sam McDowell to be known as Junior. That didn't catch, but neither has McDowell's assertion that he's 2.0 either. So, but I digress.
Vahe, you're on your way to New Orleans to cover the Final Four, and I've covered a few Final Fours. It just seems to me that the intersection of opening day and Final Four have, it's been a collision, right? You're always one of them if you're in a major league, city that doesn't care about college basketball, the Final Four gets diminished. And if you're in, a market that loves college basketball like Kansas City, that opening day, it doesn't have as much spotlight as maybe it should. The lockout has changed the baseball schedule to a point where you get a Final Four one weekend and the opening series the next weekend. I kind of like it. I think this works.
I like it a lot. And, the beauty of it for our market is, of course, having a local squad in the Final Four. And I think it's really a great sports week for the Kansas City sports fan, and really fun to have that kind of convergence of energy, or whatever you'd call it. It's a great couple days.
And what's the temperature in Kansas City today? Because I mean, we would have been starting games around this time. And I heard somebody somewhere on a radio or something like that saying that, in one market where they would have been playing a home game, the temperature for what would have been opening day was 30 degrees, or wind chill was under 20 or something like that. And that I'm not sure that the weather's going to be so much better next week, but could be.
There is snow in the forecast.
Better chance.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So, hey, I touched on it last week. Not going to let you off the hooks. We'll end with this. Have you ever taken a date to a baseball game? Lynn, let's start with you. At any time in your life, have you ever taken a date to a baseball game?
Yeah. Well, it was somebody who I was already, there was a previous relationship, but yeah, that was
wasn't the first date, but it was.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. Vahe.
It wasn't a first date like John Sherman and his wife Marnie, but I did take my lovely bride Cindy to a baseball game not so long ago, and I don't think we got through the regulation 5 innings. It was a dress to the nines day here in Kansas City. So we did it. We dressed up and we got seats in right field, and we were really in the direct sun, and we spent most of the game in the Royals Hall of Fame, and and then headed out. So, she may be suspended for a while for that one.
Seems to me those dress to the nine Sundays are always oppressively hot on days you're wearing wool.
Exactly, it's true, without fail.
Well, and we gotta knock the columnists for the poor planning there, sitting out in the right field sun. What's that? Come on now.
We were buying the cheap tickets. I'm a cheap date.
You're right, and we bring this up because John Sherman mentioned it. The Royals owner John Sherman mentioned last week that his first date with his wife was at a Royals game, and not my first date with my wife, but we've been to a few. I remember going to her first baseball game ever was at Shea Stadium, in old Shea Stadium in New York, and I remember we attended a game in Atlanta once when I ran the Peachtree 10K road race, and then countless Royals games. So,
Durham Bulls, Blair, or any minor league games?
We actually did. We actually went to Durham Bulls, and back then the Carolina Mudcats on the Raleigh side of the metro area. So yeah, it's actually a great place for a date, right? You can cheap food, cheap eats, good time, a lot of people around. I would encourage anybody who's coming up short in the creativity department or to take in a Royals game or a minor league baseball game. Those are fun times. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Monty Davis, Randy Mason, Jeff Rosen, and Chris Fickett. And a tip of the ball cap to Vahe Gregorian, Lynn Worthy, and Sam McDowell for talking baseball. Hey, my daily pitch for the morning sports edition continues. It was 40 pages today. Go to kansascity.com and the subscription tab for more information. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with another edition of SportsBeat KC.